Hello and welcome to Chess Lovers channel. In front of me you can see my latest contribution to books about Ulf Andersson. Ulf the Attacker, 56 thrilling games from Swedish chess legend. So why have I written this book? Well, 6 years ago I wrote this one in the Swedish language together with the chess journalist Robert Engqvist. This book contains more photographies. For example, here you can see Ulf after his successful tournament in Vacancy in 1971. Here you can see a later game when he's playing the Swedish champion of 1989, Jan Johansson, international master. And this game was played in the Team Championship 2016. So this book contains a lot of photos and is focused on the Swedish audience. Some other books about Ulf Andersson, when I was a very young player, this was the book you could read. Ulf Andersson's Decisive Games by the Indian international master Ravi Kumar. So this book is not so easy to get, but I can recommend it if you are interested in focusing on his sharper games. Another book was published in 2011 by New in Chess, and this book focuses on his positional masterpieces. We also have a book published in 2018, How Ulf Beats Black. So it's focused on White's opening repertoire. So I thought it was a gap. I mean, no book focused on his attacking play. So this is the reason I thought this book was missing. But now it's here. And of course I recommend it. And why do I recommend it? And why did I study Ulf in this perspective? The reason is that I believe I have found the secret, the key game that influenced Ulf in his whole career. So in the preface, I have written about a game which can be found in this book, Neuhaus and Zürich 1953, the Candidates Tournament. It's a game between Reshevsky and Bronstein, a King's Indian game. As I hope most of you now know, Neuhaus and Zürich 1953 was a very important tournament because it was a breakthrough for black openings like the King's Indian defense and Sicilian defense. And behind me, you can see a position from the King's Indian defense. I mean, you can see this weak pawn on d6, for example. And you can see that black has very strong control of the black squares. I mean, the black pawn is on a3, the black queen on a5, the bishop on g7 putting pressure along the diagonal on the knights, c3 and d4. And look at the black knights stationed on c5 and b4, putting pressure on white squares. And this is the whole point with black square strategy, that by putting pressure on the specific complex of squares, in this case black, you will win on the white squares. I mean, for example, we can imagine in the future maybe black can sacrifice a knight on b3 and the pawn on a3 would become extremely dangerous. So this position is the key position that impressed Ulf so much that he considered it one of the key games. And this is by Ulf himself. I first played through this game in my early years as it was included in one of my first chess books. I imagine it must have been an edition of this one, obviously. Even then, I was impressed by the game's structure and the fighting spirits both players displayed. The way Black maneuvered his forces, particularly the knights, made me think of two evenly matched giants, one standing on solid ground and the other on quicksand. Black's advantage grew as the game progressed. Reshevsky had no counterplay on the queen side and was forced into a desperate attempt with e4 to e5. The way Braunstein responded to this attempt and his play in the ensuing endgame brings me joy every time I revisit this masterpiece. I will not show you the game. I mean, you can play it through. It's the game between Samuel Reshevsky and David Braunstein. You can find it in the tournament book, or you can also find it in the preface in this book. But this is a key position you see behind me, and then you should remember his words. I mean, the position, White's position is the one standing on quicksand, while Black's position is standing on a firm, solid ground. So that is the key, especially how to play with the knights. So you can extract many important themes from this game alone that have influenced Ulf. I have written like this: it primarily concerns maneuvering with the intention of creating a structure where one side has an advantage on one or more squares of the same color, with particular emphasis on the placement of the knights. It also requires a psychological attitude of having a fighting spirit to achieve these goals. One can therefore view this game as an important model regarding the exploitation of squares of the same color, in this case the dark squares. There are a large number of games by Ulf where this idea runs through like a thread, often introduced by the exchange of dark square bishops on g7 to weaken the enemy king position and create weaknesses on h6 and f6. And then I'm thinking about his game against Gaprindashvili in his breakthrough tournament, Gothenburg, 1971. So what he did there was to exchange the bishop on g7 and then focus on the dark squares h6, f6 and the weak d6 pawn, which he eventually won. And later on he made a very beautiful move, knight e8. It was also about black square strategy. So by knowing this secret and keep it as a foundation of your play, you will definitely have an edge against opponents who don't think in this way. And you only need to learn one key game, the game the position you can see behind me between Reshevsky and Braunstein. There are other, important King's Indian games. I'm sure Ulf played through them all. For example, we have a game between Stålberg and Boleslavsky where black gets this weak pawn on d6. So I recommend this book if you want to focus on Ulf's more aggressive side, especially as a young player, but also as a correspondence player. And remember, the game he played against Karpov in Milan 1975 is also an attacking game where he's winning with a Sicilian defense. So I believe 953 is the key book. I will talk more about this book in the next clip. See you then.